Turn it up. It's The Record Machine with your host, Jimmy Howell.
Never seen a look shine brighter than a diamond ring. It's something. Never seen a look better than Paris in spring. It's something. Never seen a look like the way you look at me. It's better than anything I have ever seen. When I look at you, looking at me, it's better than Kate and Leo on silver screen. When I look at you, it's better than anything I've ever seen. When you look at me, looking at you, it's better than a house on a hill with a killer view. When I look at you, it's better than anything I have ever seen. That look you do is brighter than Seattle on a summer day. It's something. That look you do looks better than a painting by Monet. It's something. That look you do, yeah, that one I see in you is better than anything you could ever do. When I look at you, looking at me, it's better than Harry and Sally in the deli scene. When I look at you, it's better than anything I've ever seen. When you look at me, looking at you, it's better than a room with a view on an island cruise. When you look at me, it's better than anything I have ever seen. That look is better than Kidman's in Moulin Rouge. That look is better than Bogey's. Here's looking at you. Look at you loving me. Isn't it something? Look at me loving you. Aren't we something? Look at you, look at me. Isn't it something, love?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome singer-songwriter Garr Lange to the program. How you doing, Garr?
I'm doing good.
What's the weather like there? And you're in Reno, right?
Right, I am. And it's like 60 degrees. A little overcast today, but the thing about Reno is you get like 300 days of sunshine a year, and it's, I love it. You know, it's you get all four seasons, and I got a couple of 11,000-foot mountains in my backyard.
Wow.
Lake Tahoe. I mean, it's good life here.
How long you been there?
About 4 years.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and you're in North Carolina?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. What part?
North Myrtle Beach.
Oh, man, life's cruel to you.
Yeah, I've been here. I've been here 3 years now. I moved from New Jersey.
Oh, you're a Jersey boy.
Yeah.
I used to live in Manhattan for about 6 years, and a lot of my friends were Jersey boys.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, yeah, they got a whole, you know, there was a bunch of them that knew each other, and man, they'd go into their Jersey talk, and I was like, what are you even saying?
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from the state of Washington.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah, I grew up on an island, small island town. Yeah, it was just kind of island life.
So you grew up in Washington. At what age did you get into like singing and playing music?
Well, I started guitar lessons when I was 8.
Okay.
And then by the time I was about 12, I wanted to play like Bloomfield, and my music teacher was, pulling out "Ay, Ay, Ay" and "Last Train to Clarksville." He said, "Okay, it's time for me to just go off on my own." And so I started writing at about that time too. It was about 12 or 13. And I started writing because I thought that if I played somebody else's songs, I would have to pay them for it.
Wow.
and I was 13. I said, "Well, okay, you better start writing your own. That way you don't have to pay anybody." So I did. Mm-hmm. And it, I became more of a songwriter's guitar player than a player. And I'm glad I did, because the guitar monsters that I play with, I could never touch them with a 10-foot pole. I mean, some very good players.
Mm-hmm. Now, growing up, who were your influences as far as music goes?
Well, I got a good story. When I was 5, mm-hmm. I got for a Christmas present an album which was Ray Charles Sings the Country Hits.
Nice.
And I swear to this day that had so much influence on me. That's pretty much what you would describe my style as being, kind of R&B, country, that whole mishmash rock, all kind of thrown together, and this is the sound and the songs that I write. And of course, I've got to be able to sing them, but mm-hmm. that's a minor point.
Right.
No, I spend a lot of time thinking about singing, and I've, especially in the last 3-4 years, I've rededicated myself to the art of singing, mm-hmm. and knowing, and studying nuance and pulling that kind of thing, that attitude and that sentiment out of a lyric, and then investigating all the melody that goes with. Mm-hmm. I could sing a phrase 4 or 5 different ways, and what is the best melody, as a singer. As a writer, I've already gotten it written. I know how it goes. But as a singer, I find that you're always reinterpreting yourself, because if you are a good singer, mm-hmm. That phrasing can be done a lot of different ways. And not just the way that you originally intended it to as a writer. And I've been co-writing, which is an interesting thing for me. Co-writing has always been something that I thought wasn't up my alley. I have co-written before. I was in Nashville, I co-wrote, but I never thought that the best songs that I've written were from co-writes. And so I was always kind of hanging out on the rock and roll fringe, just doing my own thing. And then in the last couple of years, Greg McCleary, who's producing my album, Pretty Postcards, he said, well, let's kind of kick you off that old country stance that you have and get you into, pop rock, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And a little left of center, so to speak. We've got songs in this album. So what he did was he just threw arrangements at me and didn't even define whether there was how long the intro was, where the verse was, where the chorus, the bridge, and so forth. Mm-hmm. That was for me. It was the puzzle to crack. And so I simply wrote a lyric to that arrangement, and consequently, we've come out with 4 or 5 good songs that way. So I never thought it could happen in that manner, but he writes an arrangement that I would never write, if I was depending only on my hands, because in my early years with all my bands, they were just taking, what I was playing on the guitar and blowing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I have somebody else's music to write to, and I find it very freeing, because no longer do we have to hang the song on my guitar. And I think that it has really expanded my musical horizons,
Mm-hmm.
and especially as a singer. I get to investigate all kinds of things now.
Very cool. Now, when you were in college, is that when you realized that you were a good songwriter?
Yeah, I wrote this song. It was about my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Looking in My Baby's Eyes. When I got done writing that song, I thought, I am a songwriter. And that kind of gave me the confidence then to start writing seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, spend hours at it. Because that's what it takes. In order to be a good songwriter, you have to put in the time to understand the craft first and foremost. But just at first, it was me just grooving on the guitar, and then I'd throw some lyrics and stuff on it. And by the way, lyrics have never been hard for me, because I am a writer. I'm a writer first and foremost. So it was always, I could write to my own grooves. I could write a song to my grooves, and it wasn't that problematic. Whereas, I was down in Nashville. There's a lot of guys who simply could not write a lyric.
Mm-hmm.
They could play, they could really play, and they'd come up with these great grooves, but the lyric was the thing that really hung them up.
Mm-hmm.
They could hum a melody, but to put words to page, I guess that's one of the skills of being a good songwriter is writing a good lyric. And I spend time on my lyric. It's not, sure, I'll write a verse and a chorus,
Mm-hmm.
but then I'll really hone in on what that song is trying to say. And I'm an instinctual writer. It's not like even when I write novels and plays, I don't pre-plan on what's going down. Every day is a new day, and that's the way the story goes. And I think my instincts are a lot smarter than my conscious mind. My instincts are smarter than me. That's what I tell people. And so I rely on those instincts. And of course, you have to develop those over years. But, it got to the point when I was writing music that I would no longer write with a guitar in my hands or anything like that. I would just sit in my chair
Mm-hmm.
and think it, and then write the melody and the lyrics to what I was thinking. And then the last thing I would do was then take the guitar and say, okay, this is how it goes. So that way it frees you up from, having to write to a groove that your right hand is, throwing out.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of a lot more grooves than you can play. That's for dang shit.
So everybody has a different way of approaching songwriting, huh?
Absolutely. You got to find your way. If I were to say to any young songwriter who really wants to be in the business, the first thing I would say is there's no right way, there's no wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
There's your way. Speak your truth, and if you do that, you're going to write some good songs. If you have talent,
Yeah,
you got to have talent.
that helps,
you gotta
right?
Have talent. Yeah.
Helps with just a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have any talent, well.
Tell me about the big rig. Is that your first like band that you kind of cut your teeth
Professional
with?
band. Yeah, professional band.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. How it got started was I was in New York City. I was writing plays. And I wrote this one play that was off Broadway, and I wrote all the music to it. And I recorded an album that was actually inside the play. And it was, it was kind of country blues, that kind of thing. And, from there, I got signed both to a playwriting deal with William Morris and then a music deal with an outfit out of L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started juggling both of them at once. And finally I got tired of that. My agent got let go at William Morris, and the standard music thing. Then the entertainment company folds just as I was getting a song with Sister Sledge. And so anyway, I moved to Boston, and I moved into an apartment in Brookline Village, and it happened to be right underneath one of Boston's finest guitarists, Mark Sutton. And,
wow.
and Mark and I had a kind of a convincing relationship. We weren't friends or anything. I would go out and see his bands and stuff, and he was with the Rings that had an MCA deal, and he was just an incredible guitar player. And one day he just stopped, and I would see him go upstairs. But this one day he knocked on my door, and he came in and he said, I listened to you through my floorboards, and can you play me some songs? So I sat down playing about 4 or 5 songs, and he looked at me and he goes, somebody needs to get you in the studio. And that somebody is me.
Wow.
So he gathered all his, rock musician, great rockers, and said, hey, we're going to do Garr now. We're going to do Garr's music. And so they all thought it was a breath of fresh air because they weren't having out there, to play at 158 miles an hour and so forth. They were just doing Garr.
Mm-hmm.
And that became Garr Lange and the Big Rig. We recorded a 4-song demo.
Okay.
The engineer and the guy who owned the studio happened to be a great keyboard player, Greg McCleary. So he joined the band, and we got a couple of female backup singers, and we just started cranking out shows and cranking out tunes, and we became, a headliner in Boston, that's for sure. And the Big Rig was recognized as pretty much the first alt country band back then. I like to say it was before alt was invented, but we started out as kind of a country influenced band,
Mm-hmm.
and then we became a rock band. We were a rock band with some country influence, but first and foremost, we were a rock band. I mean, you came to our shows and we were rocking. Although, always out front was my vocal, and that was understood kind of, but it was a good thing I could sing a little. Otherwise, we would have been in a world of hurt.
That helps a little bit, right?
Yeah. That helps a little bit. It also helps, oddly enough, not all songwriters are singers.
Mm-hmm.
However, it really helps if you have good singer instincts as a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're creating melody, if you're a good singer, you can go a lot of different places that people who cannot sing go. So, you rely on your instincts as much as anything as a singer to write, your melodies and so forth, and how to think of melody. And I think I always invested, a lot into my melodies and lyrics. The grooves were always secondary. You could always slide something underneath it and make it sound good. But the melody and the lyric, that is the song.
Very cool. I read in your notes in your bio, it looks like 1986, you wrote a play called The Water Table, and you won the finalist award in the competition of the New England Plays. Can you talk about your playwriting and the award that you won?
Yeah. The Water Table was my third play, and it got a couple of stage readings and it won awards. And then it got a production in New Jersey at the Renegade Theater Company in Hoboken.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a very fine production. It came on the heels of the staged readings that I had at the Boston Shakespeare Company in New York, a very prestigious company. And I originally started out as a playwright because I came from New York, and I was writing plays in New York. Then I came to Boston, started the Big Rig, but I continued to write plays. And that's where the Water Table came. It was after I landed in Boston and I was doing the Big Rig, but at the same time I was writing the Water Table. And, the rest is history. Now I've gone on to write 3 or 4 more other plays. And if you were to ask me, what do I do best? I'd probably say I write plays the best, I'm a playwright. But, that hasn't been the case as far as the music and so forth, merely because, the music is so ever present. It takes a whole production company to put on your play. As your music, you set up a microphone, and you let it rip. Basically, it's a lot easier to make an album than it is to produce a play. I'll tell you.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, how long does it take to put together a play? As far as the writing and the script and casting and all that, it must take a long time, huh?
Yeah, and what happens normally is you will write the play, and then you try to drum up interest in somebody producing that play. And I normally write plays in about 3 months. That's how long it takes me to write a play. And then after that, I tinker with it and tweak with it. But, then you go into what is called a reading. And you get all these actors together, and they all read the play. They sit around a table and read it. And so they get it. They're invested in character. They've had they've read the play before. They know who their character is. So then you can hear it as a song, basically coming back. And hopefully they're picking up the cadence and the rhythms as to how you wrote. And that's what I find fascinating about plays is language. It's all about language. And anybody who is who wants to think of themselves as good writers should investigate how difficult it is to write for characters sitting around in a box. And what I always did is I tried to fracture the stage. I would usually have a reality in this part of the stage, and then another reality in this part of the stage, and I was kind of notorious for that, fracturing the actual box up into different time periods and so forth. So no, I'm really proud of my plays. And then I wrote a novel, 1990, that I shopped in New York City. And of course, it was my first draft of this novel, and I thought I was pretty good. They all said, "No, you suck." So,
wow, what was it called?
It's called 18Ks. It was it's called Bay Hymns. It was published last year.
Oh, okay.
With Ex Libris Press. And, I have written 3 novels, and that was the first one. I actually wrote the first draft in like 1992 or something. And since then, consequently, over the years, I would pick it up and I would rewrite the play. And so I probably rewrote it 5 or 6 times. I mean, rewrite the novel. And I did that 5 or 6 times, and then I landed on, the novel that I was ready to publish. And it's out there for anybody who wants, to buy it. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Ex Libris Press if you went there.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, I get a few more royalties that way than I do through a third party, but you don't write it for thinking that you're going to be the greatest writer in the world. You write it simply because the story needs a public airing. I mean, that's the way I envision any artistic project. Is it needs to be heard. Mm-hmm. The story or the play or the song is crying out to be heard, and or read, or something like that. Just images. That's the way I view writing. It's just you're throwing images at people, and hopefully they hang on to a few. Mm-hmm. When the play or the novel or the song is finished.
How many books have you written? You said 3?
3.
What's the title of the other ones?
One is called The Columbus Day Blow. I wrote that during COVID.
Okay.
I just sat down. I was going nuts. And I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to write this novel. And I'd had it in my head for years. I didn't know everything about it, of course. I just knew that this one incident took place. And from there, it would springboard into generations. And it's called The Columbus Day Blow. And it is based, in fact, in the sense of there was a Columbus Day storm in the state of Washington that blew down half the trees of an annual harvest all through Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. Mm-hmm. It had winds of up to 160 miles an hour. So it was a typhoon, and we rarely get that kind of wind. I mean, it's famous, the Columbus Day storm in the Northwest area. And it killed, probably, I think 40 or 50 people. I know I was like 5 at the time.
Wow. And
it blew the roof off of City Hall and blew down, all the shingles and stuff from the houses were flying everywhere. And you didn't want to go outside because you could get hit by all this debris that was flying around.
I bet.
And I thought it was pretty exciting, Mm-hmm. So I took that idea and said, well, I love the mountains of Washington. Let's put it in a resort town in the state of Washington, the North Cascades, and there will be the springboard. And I did that, and I wrote it in 3 months. I just whipped it out, and I just got on a roll, and it didn't stop until the end.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And the third novel, I actually started writing that a couple of years ago, mm-hmm. and it's called Jerry Lacrosse, a musician's memoir, and it's all about this Holden Caulfield kind of guy that is also a musician, and it takes you through these different stories of his life. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's based loosely on me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been in some bizarre stuff. Mm-hmm. And also the luck, and the dumb luck. And it comes towards the end of the novel. He's kind of a self-deprecating guy. He has all this bad stuff, but he ends up he just gets in bad stuff all the time. And then towards the end of the novel, there's a chapter or a story called Southward.
Mm-hmm.
And this character, his brothers and sisters all pile into his home this one day and said, "We need you to go talk to somebody." And Jerry's like, "What do you mean? Me? Talk to somebody? That's for drug addicts and alcoholics. I'm neither." And no, he said, a psychiatric person. And so Jerry finally says, "Okay, I'll go there." So he goes down there, and sure enough, after about talking an hour with the social worker, she said, "You are not leaving here. So get used to the idea that you're going to be here for the next week." In what I call the South Ward. It's a psychiatric ward of a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, Jerry finally comes to the realization, and he is diagnosed as being bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And, I could go on and on about being bipolar,
mm-hmm.
because I am bipolar. And there's a misconception out there of what bipolar is. You see it played out in the movies and in TV as if somebody's bipolar, then they're a raging maniac. Well,
right.
That's not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Jimi Hendrix, he wrote a song called Manic Depression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of CEOs, actors, entertainers, stuff like that, who are bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And they manage their lives quite well. They get themselves into some crap every once in a while if they don't take their meds. They don't see a psychiatrist and a therapist. But those are the cognitive tools that somebody has to live by if you are bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can live a fulfilling and satisfying life. I once had a psychiatrist ask me, would you do it any other way? And I said, no. It's not that I love being bipolar, but I think it has everything to do with my gift as an artist. I think the sensitivity that it brings out in somebody gives them a certain sensitivity to the world and to people and so forth. Now, if that is not held in check,
mm-hmm.
then that's where it gets dicey.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hospitalized 4 times, and it's just you can do everything right, but still you can fall through the net.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when things like suicidal ideations come into play and so forth. It's a wicked disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, there's many out there who suffer from mental illness. Just not manic depression. It's
right.
Mental illness in general. People that have mental illness. I know people that have mental illness.
We all
besides
do.
Myself. We all do.
Yes.
And it's more than it's more than just having a bad day.
Yeah, I just think that there are a lot of people out there that may be embarrassed to talk about it or to even admit it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So they kind of like just keep it to themselves. So maybe that works for them. For some people, it doesn't, I guess, But I would think in your case, like writing and playing the music, that was probably a little therapeutic for you while you were dealing with your bipolar disorder. Would you say that's fair to say?
Absolutely, Jimmy. Absolutely.
I mean, you could have been doing a lot worse things, right?
I could have been a drunk or,
Uh-huh.
and, a heavy drug abuser or whatever. And I never fell into those categories because I was always driven.
Mm-hmm.
I always had ambition. And I knew if I ever got caught up in that crap, that I would never realize that vision that I had for myself as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kept me on this, at least functioning. It wasn't until I was 40 years old that I was diagnosed. But,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I look back at my life and I go, of course, of course, of course. Then it added up, oh,
Yeah, you
that stupid
probably
move.
yeah, you probably had like a lot of things happen like along the way, and you probably couldn't figure out why you said or you did something, but then once you realize that you suffer from bipolar disorder, you might have been like, yeah, maybe that's the reason why. Now this makes sense to me.
That's absolutely what happened to me. It was all of a sudden looking back, and from the time I was in college, I can remember instances that were evidence of somebody being, an undiagnosed bipolar person. They would do that. They would do that silly thing. So I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to talk about it.
No.
I'm not afraid to admit it. I have a public stance, where I've taken that if I can help anybody just by, telling my own story, and other people may relate to it, if I can help just, a few people out there,
Right.
Man, it's worth it.
Definitely, it's definitely worth it. There may be someone who's going to listen to this and hear it and be like, oh wow, that. So besides music and writing, what else do you do to help you deal with the bipolar disorder? Because it's not something that's going to go away. It's always going to be there. It's just how you manage it, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's all about how you manage it. Some people manage it better than others.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all forms of, depressions and so forth. But, you got to get out of your own artist's mind too. It's unfair to your wife if you're going to sit there, be in your artist's mind all the time. I'll hear, that knock on the door at, in my office at 5 o'clock, and it's time to put it all down.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it. Go live your life. Go love your dog. Go love your wife. Go love, the friends and the people in your family and so forth that are around you. You have to make time for that human touch. You can get caught up into your artistry so far that it's, it presents to you an unreality,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not real. I mean, if you're going to live in your head, what's so real about that?
Right.
You can talk to yourself about it, but even in talking to you, Jimmy, I'm like, well, how do I write a song? I don't really know. How do I write a novel? Well, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
I just do it.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
You said that you didn't discover, you weren't really diagnosed with this until you were 40 years old. So when you were playing in the big rig and you were writing these plays and writing these books, it wasn't really until after, like, you were more like a solo artist at this point, right? When you realized that you were bipolar?
Well, I was recording an album with Paul Spear, who was a Grammy Award-winning producer in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and I was recording this album, which is Crossing the Line, which is I released in 2003. I recorded in 2003. I released it in 2004, and people on Spotify and whatever can call up Garr Lange, Crossing the Line, and bang, you're going to hear it even today. And it was a very, very good album produced by Paul. And he got the best Seattle session players, and they were all doing it. And we had just recorded the basics, and I went in the hospital for the first time. I don't know why then. I have no idea. But I was right in the middle of recording that album when I had to call time out and go into the hospital for the first time to get my diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know why. I really don't know why, Jimmy, it was during that time, because you would think that it would be, such a time of elation and stuff, this album, and it's these songs are coming out incredibly well, and you're so happy. And, and the next day you're taking a trip to the southward. So
maybe you're just overwhelmed with all the attention and you were getting. I mean, everything she does that made the Billboard top country chart.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, that's got to be like, oh wow, you know.
Well, when you're in it, you don't really think it, but you know, as I look back on it, I was going, well, yeah, must have had something going for me, you know. And it was just a wonderfully produced and played album, and I happened to get lucky and sing some good vocals, so I hope to get lucky a lot more times.
What was it like working with Paul?
Oh man, it was like, you know, he was so in control of the environment, but his musicians that he brought in, he would let them, you know, first it was the bass player and the drummer who came in and did the session, and all they were doing was playing to my scratch guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, I don't know, they had a foresight as to what this song was going to be, you know, as they were playing, because once we started layering these songs with different instruments, it was like these guys were right on the money. They were anticipating what it was going to sound like already, you know, when they're just playing to my guitar. And they were incredible that way. And good session artists are like that. You know, they're players who already have the vision when they're laying down the basics. You know, they know what this song is going to be. And good session artists are like that. Now, bands, when you get bands together, that's a little different. A producer would much rather work with session artists than he would a band,
mm-hmm.
for the most part. Because the band, the players are all have their set parts, and they come in, and if the part doesn't work, then what do? You know? Then you have to start rearranging the whole song and stuff like that. Whereas if you begin with a studio artist, and that's what Paul was, he just gave them a little bit of direction,
mm-hmm.
and next thing you know, they were giving it right back to him. And he knew when it was right, and he knew when it was wrong, and it wasn't often that it was wrong. But every once in a while, he'd play the traffic cop and say, "No, I think we ought to emphasize this, you know, in this manner." And that's all he had to say. I mean, I think good producers are like that.
Mm-hmm.
They bring out the best in the artist and the songs.
Tell me about Writers in the Round.
Yeah, I got to Nashville and I thought I was something. And when you get down there, you realize, no, you're just like everybody else. And so I started playing in these Writers in the Round in Nashville. And they're notorious. You know, they're all over the city. Mm-hmm. You know, you get 4 people up there in different sessions and playing these, and just playing their songs, like one after another. This guy would play this, then this girl would play this, and this guy. And so there'd be like 4 of you up on stage. Well, it got to be where I got to be a performer, a featured performer at these things, where I would just get up there with my guitar and play for 30, 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. Solo.
Wow.
And I got to be pretty known for that kind of deal, but not all songwriters are performers, and not all songwriters are singers. You know, in fact, a lot of the songwriters aren't singers. But if you are, and you happen to be, and have those talents, and you're comfortable on stage, and you've done it a million times, like I had by the time I got to Nashville, it was second nature for me, and I really enjoyed that part of it. I wasn't getting anywhere in the publishing world just because I wrote songs that were a little bit different than what than what Nashville country was all about.
Mm-hmm.
But I sure enjoyed playing them. My songs, I always tell people, yeah, I really like playing them.
They were called Century Music, right?
Yes, it was Century Music then, and I wrote a lot of songs for Century, and a couple which will be on an album that I'll be releasing in 2022. A couple of those songs that I wrote during that Nashville period between 2007 and 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a lot of good songs back then, some that I'm very proud of. And a couple of these songs with Greg McCleary producing, who is a Boston-based producer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also a member of the Big Rig, by the way. He was the original studio owner. But he just called me up and said, "We got some unfinished business to do. Let's do it." And so it started about a year ago. And we're in the home stretch right now.
Oh, yeah? When's it going to come out?
Greg seems to think that the recording and the mixing and the mastering would all be done probably by June.
Very cool.
So then it takes a little bit of a build up for the marketing aspect and so forth. And I'll have a video coming out. And I don't know which song will be the video. I'm kind of leaning one way, and then the next thing I know, maybe the other way. So I know there's a couple that you're going to play on my show, or on your show, excuse me, not my show. They're called, one is called Why I Cry.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is called Look.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you this. I'm going to feature both of the songs in the podcast. What's the story behind each song?
Look was, I wrote it in Nashville. And, I sat down and I thought, I haven't written a love song, just an out-and-out pure love song in a while. So let's write one. And all of a sudden, I just started thinking about it. The groove came.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty simple groove. And then I started singing it. And then I did this whole thing around look. And it has phrases about Harry and Sally in the deli scene, about looking at movies. And there's a part where at the end, where I'm, reciting the line, the famous Humphrey Bogart line, when he said to Ingrid Berg, "Here's looking at you."
Mm-hmm.
And "Here's looking at you, sweetheart," is actually the line, and that's what I use in the song. And it's a pop song. It's as much as I can write a pop song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got some, some country flavoring. It's got the telly in there. But I never really wrote it, thinking it was a country song. I wrote it, or a country. I wrote it as, this is me writing the love song, the love song that I want to write. If people want to interpret it as country or as pop or whatever, I'm really into genre bending. I don't really like to pigeonhole myself, because
mm-hmm.
the music industry is going to do enough of that for you anyway. So, I just wrote it as a pop song.
Mm-hmm.
And the second song that you are going to feature, I believe, is Why I Cry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a song that I wrote only about a month ago.
Wow.
And I just, I wrote it. It's, it's imbued in poetics, but it is the story of somebody who suffers from depression.
Mm-hmm.
But but of course, it's not saying, poor pitiful me. It's just, the facts. This is the facts in poetic form.
Right.
what it is to live in depression. So, not that I live in depression, of course not. I don't. I'd drive my wife crazy.
You manage.
I manage. That is the key. That's right, Jim. I manage.
You have to be able to manage and balance it, right?
Well, a balance is very much a key. You know, you have to understand. My wife can always point out to me, she goes, I can look in your eyes and I know when you're having a dip or when you're having, you know, what is called a hypomania, which is, you know, your thoughts get a little faster. You start talking a little faster. You know, that's the manic part of manic depression. However, you know, you have dips. You have dips, and then you have raises, and so my wife is on top of it better than I am. Mm-hmm. Well, you're doing that. Well, you're doing that again. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, right?
If you don't manage it, it's tough. If you manage it, it's like, you know, I don't even think about it really.
Mm-hmm.
I take my meds. I talk to my therapist, talk to my psychiatrist. I talk to my wife, and I'm what is called a high functioning bipolar 1, and that is we're pretty super driven, pretty laser focused, and that's why you have a partner that can bring you out of that. Hey, it's time to go to a movie, or hey, you know,
yeah,
on Netflix,
right?
You know, live life, be a human being.
Yeah, well, I guess it makes it easier to have somebody that can see that you may be going through something at the moment and maybe try to distract you from that to try to make you feel better.
And that's what a good partner does. I'll tell you, Jimmy, God bless them.
Yeah.
You know, they got to live with it just as much as you got to live with it. And my wife has studied it for 30 years. You know, she started in her 20s. Now, she's not bipolar at all, but she has studied what bipolar depression is and the disorder and so forth. So she knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. She has me reading books and things of that nature. I just kind of do. Just go along, not even think twice about it, as long as, you know, I don't fall through the net. And every once in a while you do. You know, the psychiatrist once told me, you know, you're like a heart patient with, you know, high blood pressure. You know, when you start feeling chest pains, you got to go into the hospital.
True.
And I said, yeah, okay. I can dig that.
I think that's good advice.
I think so too. I always thought I was, you know, I was a little bit ashamed, you know, that I had to go in the hospital for a week, and just get tuned out. But no, he was saying, hey, don't think it's any big deal. You know, it's what you got to do to manage, as you say, Jimmy.
Now, you've said you weren't diagnosed with this until you were 40. So here's a question for you: do you have any regrets or any bad moves that you've made along the way that you feel that your disorder might have played a key part in it, in making a bad decision or doing something stupid?
Well, how long is this interview going to be? Because I could probably cite about 80 examples. I got some classic ones. I turned down when I was with the Rig. I turned down record deals just because I thought, you know, well, if you're not going to take the band, or if you're not going to let me sing my own songs, and I'll find somebody who will, you know. And you know, and so that, you know, if you tell the major labels, especially like Nashville RCA, who's coming after me, you tell them that they lose interest in you quite quickly. So yeah, I've done a lot of stupid things like that, you know, thinking that.
What about crashing an airplane? I read about that, in your sheet too. How did you crash an airplane into a hangar?
Well, my best friend in high school was a pilot.
Oh, okay.
And he and his dad had built a Cessna four-seater in their garage. And so this was about 2 weeks after the plane had been all checked out. And my buddy and I were going to go fly him. You know, we often did in the afternoon or something, fly over to Victoria and do something like that. And the plane would not start on this one occasion. And the plane was parked sideways to the hangar. Mm-hmm. And so he got out, put me in the pilot's seat to prop start it. So he did prop start it, however, jumped the chocks. And I was going along almost ready to take off. And I don't know a damn thing about how to fly an airplane. Mm-hmm. So I did know enough that if I stuck the rudder in, or I stuck my foot in the rudder, I could make it go to the left. And I was going parallel to the hangar. And so it whipped me right around in the hangar, going probably 50, 60 miles an hour. And the struts from the wing kept me from going through the hangar. Mm-hmm. But here I am, 17 years old, and they famously called me the Red Baron around town.
I bet.
After that, yeah, it was a scary thing, you know. Once I thought about it after it happened, but I wasn't hurt. I had a bump on my head, and that was about it from hitting the windshield. But you know, it's just one of those stupid moves that you do when you're a 17-year-old.
How'd you run over your foot?
Oh man.
You ran over your foot with a forklift, right?
No, somebody else ran over it.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't me. Oh. I folded up the recording and the writing in Nashville, so I had to find a job. Okay, I'll go down to Home Depot. So I went down to Home Depot, and I was working in the lumber department. And one day it was storming outside, and you have a big forklift that picks up the cement blocks and so forth. So I was the guy on the ground, and the guy in the forklift himself was backing up and going forward and loading these blocks. Well, I was right in back of him at one point when a thunderbolt hit. And I looked over at the guy that was in the garage who was also monitoring us. Mm-hmm. Like, what the heck are we going to do now? And that's when the guy on the forklift backed over me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got my right foot caught underneath it, and it created a pressure wound where I had to be in a hyperbaric chamber for the next 3 months. For 3 hours a day.
Wow.
In order to heal this pressure wound on the back of my foot. It was all through my Achilles and so forth. So yeah, it was just one of those things that happened to you.
Wow. Does your foot bother you sometimes still?
Well, I had also snapped the Achilles on a basketball court. The same one that got ran over.
Jeez.
So, and you want to hear about, no. Yeah, so that Achilles, that will hurt more than the actual pressure wound, because that was eventually closed up through skin grafts and so forth. It was, so, you know, I did recover from that. And then I moved to Seattle, and then Phoenix, and then Reno.
Wow.
Just bang, bang, bang. I had given up. After 2009, I gave up writing, singing, doing all that for like the next 12 years.
What were you doing?
Odd jobs.
Oh, okay.
Doing this, doing that.
Uh-huh.
You know, I've worked on golf courses. I've built golf courses. I've been a finished supervisor for golf courses. I also had landscape companies and stuff that did high-end stuff like putting a white sand trap in your front yard, mm-hmm. things of that nature. But yeah, it's another talent that I love and that I really invested a lot of time in. Building golf courses. That usually takes about a couple of years. So you're on site, and a finish supervisor, what they do is they put the final touches on the hole before you throw down the grass.
Oh, nice.
So you just pretty much, it's usually built on sand,
Mm-hmm.
on about 12 inches of sand everywhere. And so you sculpt and shape the sand and so forth to make it a good golf course, hopefully.
Do you play the game?
I did.
Okay.
I grew up playing it. Yeah,
Nice.
I was a good golfer.
Really? You ever play with any professional golfers?
Oh yeah, I grew up in the state of Washington. I don't know about who Fred Couples is. But,
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah. Well, Freddie was part of that group when we were state juniors, and he later went on to be a Masters champion and so forth. But, yeah, I played with a lot of guys, and when I lived in South Lake Tahoe right after graduating from college, and I lived with a bunch of collegiate golfers.
Very
And
cool.
I had played a little bit in college. I really wasn't interested. I went there, on a make good golf scholarship at Washington State University, but I just decided I had too much going on.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't invest the time. So when I went down to Edgewood, I stayed with a bunch of, Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, these kind of golfers. And it was kind of cool because, on every Friday night we'd have a shootout. And, we'd all throw in $10 and winner take all.
Nice.
There'd be 20, 25 of us. So. Well, you're down in South Carolina, and that's a mecca.
Oh, yeah, there's
Of
like
golf
100 golf courses down here. There's one like 2 blocks from my house. And then,
Do you play at all?
No, I never played. I mean, I've hung out with people that played, and I would go and sit, by the sideline and have a drink and watch them play and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
me and my wife, we don't play golf. We like to watch. I usually watch it on TV too, but I've never played it except mini golf. But I get that doesn't count.
Oh yeah, no, that does count.
I'm good at putting, on the mini golf course, but I've never played like a game of golf on a golf course though. So
Well, a lot of people are addicted to it. I don't play much anymore. I play a couple, 2-3 times a year, and I can still get it around, but I'm not.
mm-hmm.
I don't play competitively, and nor do I think of the game competitively like I did, in my early 20s and teens and so forth. It's just a place to go out and
Mm-hmm.
knock it around and have a beer afterwards.
Right. Are you working on anything right now other than the album that's coming out this spring?
Well, yes, I am. I am writing a play
Okay.
right now that I finished the first act,
Mm-hmm.
and the second act. I got to think about it a little more before I start writing. The first scene of the second act, because I think I know where it's going. But, until I start to sit down and watch it evolve from, the tips of my fingers, I won't really know what's going on with it. I write from feeling, and, I haven't caught the feeling yet to write the second act.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming. It's coming.
You have a title?
Yeah, it's called Sweets.
Nice.
And Sweets is the nickname for a guy
Mm-hmm.
who is, he's a rock and roll star, but he's also a philosopher. He's also known as a very kind, spiritual kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
So people look to him for that kind of stuff. But he's also has this disease called Behringer's disease.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I made that up. It's not a real disease.
Okay.
But if he were to be let out unsupervised of psychiatric hospital in which he lives, he has an apartment and people, visit him. But if he were to be let out unsupervised, his natural inclination would be to kill himself.
Wow.
And that's the Behringer's disease. And it's also at a time when it is the era of sexual death. And sexual death is anybody who would have a relationship with somebody outside of somebody who is safe, and they would contract sexual death, and consequently, you would die.
Wow.
And so it's very interesting, how the whole society is, and it's interwoven with music and things of that nature. Parties, cocktail parties, where they sit around and sing well because his band is all there singing.
Mm-hmm.
But Sweets. And so Sweets is that's his name, Sweets, and it's all about how he manages his life, which is very, and the people around him who manage his life.
Mm-hmm.
And the women in his life and the men in his life. I won't go any further.
And when can we expect that? Maybe sometime next year?
Yeah, I just don't know. It might be after I finish the album.
Mm-hmm.
It might be then, okay, let's write that second act. I still have some polishing to do to the Jerry Lacrosse novel. Mm-hmm. Which I need to rewrite it again, make it funnier. It is funny, but I want to make it funnier.
Mm-hmm.
But Sweets is something that'll just be on my mind. One day I'll sit my butt down in the chair and I'll start writing the first dialogue, and that's when it'll begin. I can't predict when that will be, but I know that I'm thinking about it now. So
mm-hmm.
when I get that feeling, that's when it's and I'll write it quickly. I'll write the second act in probably a couple weeks.
Very cool. Do you have a website you'd like to promote?
I don't. I did have my website for many years, and then I decided no. Mm-hmm. And now I primarily, if you look up Garr Lange on Facebook, I communicate a lot with people that are my friends in Facebook. And I started that during the COVID times because I had no community. I really couldn't get out of the house like many people. So, I started writing in my Facebook page. And I will post songs, and I will post you stories behind the songs, backstories. Mm-hmm. On that page, I will do things like post the Jimmy Hall interview.
Very cool.
And I see on the SoundCloud, you're a follower. I follow you. Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, by the way, Jimmy, every time I look at that picture, I'm going, man, that guy's about to open up a can of whoop ass on me. I was like, man, look at that. He's serious.
You talking about the picture with the glasses on?
No, it's the picture where you have the two fingers up and you're in your leathers and so forth.
Yeah, I'm wearing sunglasses, right?
Oh, are you wearing sunglasses?
Yeah. My friend took that picture. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, dude is serious.
Yeah, on that page I have like the voice work that I do for like radio stations and stuff. Yeah.
Correct. I've gone through all of them. I'm listening to them. I'm going, oh, is that how they do it?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. I had no idea what a voiceover, how how you become a voiceover artist, because I'm sure there's an art to it.
Yeah, I guess. There is. They used to be, they would say, oh, you'd have to have like a deep voice to do it. That's not true anymore. I mean, there's so many people that have beautiful voices that, they just speak well. And I think that's more what they look for now. Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, no, you definitely have and I wouldn't call it a classic RA20 radio voice. It's a pleasant voice that you will want to listen to. You know, I hear you speak to me, and I'm going, man, guy's got a voice. No wonder he does VOs.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I enjoy doing it, but I enjoy doing this more. I love talking to new people and sharing their music and their stories. I think it's really cool. It's something different, you know. I mean, you can go listen to music anywhere, but I'd like to listen to the music and hear the stories about the music too, you know.
Well, absolutely, and by talking to different artists, that they all have a different process. They all have a different method. Mm-hmm. They all have different ideas.
Right.
You know, I write in a couple, 3, 4 different genres. Mm-hmm. You know, and the guy next door, he may be, you know, doing speed metal. You know,
right.
And I appreciate all kinds of music. I think most musicians do. Mm-hmm. They, you know, as long as you're good at the genre that you're playing in, that's something to be respected. You know,
right?
Just because I write all country and kind of rock pop, that doesn't mean that I can appreciate Pearl Jam or Soundgarden, or,
right? I mean,
something like that.
Yeah, I know guys who do, you know, similar shows as me, but they only stick to one genre. Like, you know, they'll do like the hard rock or just all hard rock artists. And for me, I didn't want to be like, you know, put in that category. I think because I have like this, like you said, this wide variety, this whole different tastes of music. So for me, I think it makes my show even bigger because I have everybody on. You know, I have country artists. I could have a heavy metal singer. I could have a pop singer. I could have, you know, a jazz band or something like that. I mean, you know, there's no...
Hats off to you.
No holds barred.
Hats off to you.
You know?
I tell you, you know, I wish more people who did podcasts and radio DJs and so forth had that mentality, you know, that music is music.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's done well, you know, I'm all for it. I mean, the people who, even if it's not done well, I mean, I appreciate the effort. You know?
Right.
I appreciate the effort of what goes into you know, writing a song or playing an instrument. You know, how many of us out there were sitting there, you know, on the edge of our beds, investing thousands of hours into how to play the guitar, or the piano, or you know, just being a musician in general. It takes a lot of practice.
Sure does.
A lot of practice. Yeah. Do you play?
No, I don't. When I was a teenager, I thought I wanted to, you know, be a rock star, and I bought a guitar because, you know, a couple of kids in school had one, but I sucked at it. I was better at being a DJ, so I started DJing when I was like 12 years old, and I would...
No!
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I have thousands of records in the room that I'm talking to you from right now is like a radio station. I just have albums and 45 records. I have 8-track tapes, cassette tapes, CDs, and everything works, you know?
Yeah, those cassettes, that's where I started in the music business, was you know, releasing cassettes. You know, the big rig, our first album was a cassette. You know, it was, you know, 16 songs that we had recorded, and we put them, some were live and some were studio, and it was got to be, you know, well known in the Boston area as being a cool thing to have, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Boston was a hard rocking town. I tell you, we'd be warming up a band who was just blistering us, you know, after we got down. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we couldn't rock. We could rock, but there was just some, you know, like I said, it was a hard rocking town. You finally find your niche, you know. Instead of going down to the Rat, you were up at Harper's Ferry or Bunratty's in Alston, rather than rather than playing, the hardcore places. But I appreciated, I love going down the Rat and watching these guys just rock.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and of course, it's where Berkeley is and stuff like that. So, consequently, Boston was a mecca for just very fine musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was there, they said that there was 1,500 original bands in Boston.
Wow.
Playing solely original music.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of bands.
Yep.
And they were all vying for, about 100 stages a night. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but boy, it was a great time. It was a great time to be in Boston, the late 80s, early 90s. There was a lot of great bands that came out of there, and that was in the scene. And some of them never got a chance, and some of them never got it. I mean, the Big Rig never got their chance. So.
Will there ever be a Big Rig reunion?
Probably not. No. I've been after Greg, who holds all our library of recordings. We probably have 60 recordings to put together, a 12-song album of Big Rig stuff. And he's still on the fence about it, and it's not because they're not good recordings. He says, I have such little control over the mastering process because I only have the recordings as we recorded them. He doesn't have the original tape or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So it's more of an engineering thing, producer engineering kind of thing. I'm going to pound on him some more though, and because there's some good music there that, as I said before, needs to see the light of day. Mm-hmm. Just because it was performed well, it was done well, good songs,
Got to make that happen, Garr.
Well, I'm trying. I got to twist arms.
Yeah. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to mention that we didn't talk about today?
You were such a good interviewer, Jimmy, that we pretty much covered all the bases. You brought out things in me that I never thought I'd be talking about.
Wow.
And I know I'm a fairly quiet guy normally, but you've just turned the switch on, and I talked about my artist process, about what I do. You're going to play some of my music. Perhaps people will like it. Mm-hmm. Maybe they won't. That's the beauty of music, is that some people will like it, some people won't.
Yep. And
that's it's like pretty women and pretty men, Yep. Some people will think that woman is pretty, or that guy is a really handsome guy. And others will say, nah. Mm-hmm. So that's music, and that's art in general.
Absolutely.
And you gotta have thick skin in order to be in this business. Mm-hmm. Because people are going to take shots at you all along the way. I don't care how good you are.
Right.
Just for, because you do something. And hopefully they do, because if you take a stance, if you create a stance for yourself, then people who don't like that stance, by all means, I welcome that, that conversation, those critiques and so forth, because at least I'm moving them one way or another. They're not just sitting there with total indifference, They are actually, you are moving them to say, man, you suck, or man, I really like you, or, you're moving them one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what it's
and
about.
That's what I believe an artist is,
Mm-hmm.
Create your voice and stick to your truth. And that pretty much sums up what I think an artist should be.
No, that's a good description.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I try to tell people, write your own truth. And they, the younger writers, and what's that? Well, you just stick to what you feel is honest.
That's a good title for an album.
Speak your truth?
Write your own truth.
Write your own. Hey, good. Very good. Write your own truth.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be a great title for an album. Know?
Well, that's going to be the next one then. Write Your Own Truth.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you said it. That came from Garr Lange's lips. Write Your Own Truth.
Yeah, but it was also Jimmy going, that'll be a great title. So you get ownership.
You can thank me in the credits.
I certainly will. I certainly will.
Well, Garr, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your stories with me and your music. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the album when it's done. Well,
thank you, Jimmy. And like I said, you have brought out some things in me in this conversation that I never thought we'd get into, and that's the mark of somebody who is an interviewer and somebody who is listening.
Well, I'm really glad that you enjoyed the conversation, and love to have you back anytime. I mean, you have my number and my email. Let's stay in touch.
Certainly will, Jimmy. Thanks a lot.
All right, you have a great night, buddy, all right?
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm harboring heartbreaks, I withdraw 'cause of them. I circle my defenses again and again. The walls all surround me and they're closing in. I'm defeated by deceptions from the enemy within. That's why I cry. That's why I cry. My constant companions are things that aren't real. My daily disposition is the way that I feel. I wear my disguises to conceal the truth. I wrestle with emotions. Now what do I do? That's why I cry. That's why I cry. My mind is on fire, and through the smoke I see the gentle, gentle man I've always wanted to be. I hear the worried whispers, what will become of him? I'm haunted by the pictures of the danger I'm in. That's why I cry. That's why I cry. That's why I cry. That's why I cry.